In a frozen land, one man stands alone. Here, the cold can kill you in a single night. The player is left on his own. No Tim, no help, no way out. The only thing between life and death is survival instinct. To reach $1 million, he has to hunt, build fire, and fight off hunger, loneliness, and fear that eats away at him each day. Out here, there are no losers, only the one who lasts. On day one, the moment Tim steps off the helicopter, he makes a silent deal with the wild. No turning back, just man versus nature. Every step is a test of survival. Tim wants to scout the area first, so he's already packed safety gear, air horn, bear spray, and a bear deterrent. More than the title, he wants to make it home safe to his wife. Since wildlife is sensitive to sound, he chooses a bow. Quiet and deadly. An arrow makes almost no noise in flight. Moose can hear from over 2 miles away, so the right tool can mean survival. That alone proves his high-level hunting skill. It comes from how he grew up, a skilled logger by trade. Tim was raised in the wild, not just hunting, but building shelters and living off the land. It's second nature to him. After getting married and having kids, even with low living costs, money pressure keeps growing. That's why he joined this challenge, to win the prize and change his life. Pushing through brush to the river, Tim spots broken traps and tracks. Black bear and grizzly. Animal tracks along the bank grab his attention. Besides bear tracks, there are even more moose prints. That tells him moose were here not long ago. But grizzlies like flat riverbanks, so Tim heads deeper into the woods for moose. A sharp squirrel call breaks the silence. Tim draws his bow. 1 arrow. 1 squirrel down in the brush. His hunting skills check out. I've got a squirrel? That's huge. That squirrel means he won't go hungry tonight. He plans to use the guts as fish bait. In the Mackenzie River and Delta, there's whitefish, pike, and other feeders. Squirrel guts make perfect bait. When Tim wipes squirrel blood on his shoulder, that's when the $1 million survival challenge truly begins. The quiet war for $1 million is on. Soon after, Tim bags a second squirrel. After gutting it, he uses the insides as bait on his fishing hook. Food comes first. Without steady calories, shelter won't matter. So Tim builds a quick temporary shelter. Years in the wild make his movements smooth and fast. In no time, he throws up a lean-to. Simple, but good enough to get him through the first week. After that, long term. This is the safest, most efficient survival plan. When Tim reaches the river to check the line, he already knows it's a hit. The tight fishing line means something's on. And sure enough, it's a northern pike. Honestly, Tim is insanely lucky. This pike measures 25 inches, about 1,750 calories, and 370 grams of protein. Enough to recover the energy burned building the shelter. He immediately starts a fire. It's fall in the Arctic Circle. The sun sets around 10:15 p.m. There's no time to process and preserve meat, so the only option is to cook it all and eat a big meal. He filleted the pike and filled a large pot with stew. While waiting, he ate 2 squirrels as an appetizer. That's another 600 calories. Even if he's not full yet, no worries. The pot of fish is more than enough to fill him up. Battling it out for the upcoming $1 million prize, day 1 is on track. A dream start boosts his confidence for the $1 million ahead. By day 5, water becomes a constant issue. Every time he boils water in the metal pot, he has to wait a long time before drinking it. Plus, storing water keeps the pot tied up. Not practical. So he turns an arrow quiver into a water container. He melts beeswax and pours it inside, letting it soak into the fibers to seal it waterproof. Then he fills it with cooled, boiled water. Now the metal pot is free again for cooking or boiling more water. 1 quiver holds about 4 liters, enough for a full day. But loose arrows are still a hazard. For a skilled hunter like Tim, that kind of accident is unacceptable. He cuts 2 pieces from his shoulder guard, folds them, and drills holes to secure the arrow shafts. Then he ties them tight onto the bow as a fixed holder. It carries 4 arrows at a time. In the wild, this holder doesn't just secure the arrows, it also keeps him from carrying a bulky quiver. After testing it and seeing everything works fine, Tim takes the bow to the river to watch and scout. There are lots of bear tracks, but in 5 days he still hasn't seen one. Then he suddenly spots fresh moose tracks. That's a good sign, so Tim follows the trail right away. From day 1, he set a goal to hunt big game, because food is the key to this challenge. If he can take a muskox like Roland or a moose like Jordan, then winning is only a matter of time. Pushing through the brush, Tim sees a swamp. A bull moose is lying there resting. He quickly realizes he's in the wrong wind and he can't stay, because his scent will carry on the wind and put the animal on alert. So he circles around the grass to get closer, then tries standing still and calling it in. Tim's call works and gets its attention, making the moose stand up and start to leave. For this meat, Tim risks everything. The second call makes the moose hesitate, so he keeps copying the sound. After 3 calls, his heart is pounding like it's about to jump out of his throat because he's never hunted moose by calling like this. In the end, the animal turns back toward the sound, but the distance is still 150 meters. Too far. Tim moves in slowly with the bow, but the moose looks at him and slowly walks away. That moment was probably Tim's best hunting chance. First shot fails. The arrow drops right under the moose's belly, but luckily the animal doesn't panic and run. It gives him a second chance. Sadly, the second shot fails too. Odd because Tim misses a branch in front of him. The branch blocks the moose's body and knocks the arrow down. In just 2 shots, Tim goes from fired up to ice cold. That branch doesn't just stop the arrow, it feels like it stabs his heart. He goes back to camp like he's lost his soul, hurting worse than heartbreak. He almost cries and has no drive to do anything. Because sometimes, the bigger the hope, the deeper the fall. In a blink, 7 days pass, and through those 7 days, every day Tim comes back to this area to watch, looking for moose and hoping one will show up in front of him again, because that feeling of failure weighs heavier than anything he's been through. No matter how badly he wants that golden moose, this is the only place Tim has ever seen one. And moose are huge animals with a very high need for water. This spot fits their survival needs, so there's still a chance Tim will see one again. Before he gets red meat, his main food source is still fish, so Tim wants to weave a backup net for fishing. By coincidence, that day is also his oldest son's 9th birthday, so he plans to treat this net as a birthday gift for his son, so father and son can both be part of this adventure. Tim believes the net will bring good luck. Not by a little after 7 p.m., the net still isn't done, so he decides to go to the river to check the fishing line. During this time, Tim's mind is still fully on the moose, but when the camera cuts, he's already lifting up a 34-inch northern pike. In that moment, Tim forgets the pain of failing to hunt the moose and gets lost in the joy of landing a fish. On the second line check, he surprisingly hooks another northern pike. Tonight, we feast. Thank God for this beautiful fish. By the morning of day 13, long-term malnutrition makes his blood slow to clot. Tim suddenly gets a nosebleed. His biggest worry is the smell of blood drawing in black bears, because a bear's sense of smell is 2,100 times stronger than a human's, and they can detect food from far outside camp. Tim's solution is to throw the blood-soaked leaves into the fire. A pretty solid move. Once the bleeding stops, he jumps straight into building a long-term shelter. The fish from yesterday will feed him for 2 days. The big temperature drop at night tells him winter is closing in, so a solid, warm shelter matters more than ever. Tim weighs his options and uses what's around him. Massive logs, in each weighing hundreds of kilos, are something most people with weak backs would never touch. But for a logger like Tim, they're normal. He decides to build, right on the spot, a lean-to-style log shelter. It saves hauling time and keeps him from burning too much energy. The last time people saw someone use logs this heavy to build a shelter was Roland in Season 7, and this shelter clearly aims straight at the $1 million prize. He packs moss into the gaps between the logs, then wedges rocks to lock it in. Wood has natural insulation, so when winter temperatures drop hard, thick log walls block cold air and cut heat loss, while moss acts like a natural wind barrier, stopping the cold wind fast. In just 1 day, Tim finishes the log shelter. That's thanks to years of experience as a professional logger, plus elite strength and skill. Almost no one can match him. In a harsh place like this, that lets Tim finish critical survival work fast. Look at my fortress. Lately, Tim has been non-stop building the shelter. And he can feel how smooth the progress is. Watching it come together, he's hungry, but he's got good fish meat to refuel. Everything looks calm and steady. But right when I think Tim has forgotten the goal of $1 million hunt from day 1, a sound behind him suddenly snaps him back. It sounds like a moose cracking brush, like a gate swinging open. Tim jumps up and looks, and the moose he's been waiting for finally shows up again. Right then, a weasel appears out of nowhere, startling him. He gets so mad he grabs a stick and chases it, but his personal beef with the weasel has to wait for now. Because right now, there's something bigger to deal with, worth millions, waiting on him. The moose is pretty far out. Learning from the last failed hunt, this time Tim decides to follow the river to move in, get behind the moose, and take the shot. Let's quickly break down the terrain. His shelter is set up right here. When he hears the moose, he cuts through thick woods to the grass and spots it way out there. So he decides to swing around behind it, dog tracking along the riverbank to reach its backside. That's his position now. And here's a spoiler for you. After Tim hits it, the moose panics, runs into the nearby woods, and drops. Now that we understand the layout, let's get back to the video. It's fall in the Arctic Circle, and it's also moose rut season, so the bulls are more active. Tim gets on the downwind side of the moose and keeps copying cow calls to draw it in. Not only does it come closer, it stops about 50 meters away to feed. That gives Tim a perfect shot window. From the bubbly sound after impact, you can tell the arrow punched a lung and air is leaking out. Tim knows for sure this moose will die. You can't miss the excitement on his face. It shows how pumped he is right now. It's not an exaggeration to say he's got one hand on the $1 million prize. I don't care how loud I am. I don't care what that noise brings. The biggest animal out here is down. After waiting 1 hour, the moose is completely dead. This moose weighs around 1,200 pounds. So much even heavier than a 900-pound muskox, though not as massive as the one Roland took down at about 1,980 pounds. Just moving it alone would be extremely hard for one person. Oh my God, what a monster. A huge moose means a ton of meat, but it also brings a whole new challenge. Right now it's about 14 degrees Celsius. Moose meat that isn't cooled will start to spoil within 12 to 24 hours, so Tim has to work fast to keep it from going bad. First, he decides to gut it completely, because bacteria grow in the organs 3 to 5 times faster than in muscle. That step also helps drop the body's overall heat fast, slowing bacterial growth and buying time for the next steps, meat care and storage. He's also worried the blood smell will draw black bears, since their sense of smell is 2,100 times stronger than ours. So he builds a fire right next to it, because smoke and fire smell warn a lot of wild animals and can mask or thin out the blood scent. And he grills a bit of meat, too. Breaking down a moose takes a massive amount of effort. Even experienced butchers with full tools need 6 to 8 hours to finish the job. Even though Tim has experience with big game, this is still his first time breaking down a moose. So while he's working, eating a few bites of grilled meat to refill his energy is a must. Tim removes the moose's forelegs first, then works on the rest. By a little after 7 p.m., he's only processed about half the animal, and the rest has to wait until the next day. Before dark, Tim has to haul all the meat he's cut back to camp, 1.6 kilometers away. With about 500 pounds of meat, he'll need around 5 trips. This is truly an epic physical grind. That night, he sits by the fire and eats hot grilled meat, but what worries him most is the safety of the half moose left exposed in the woods. With how dangerous this ecosystem is, he won't haul meat all night, because there are over 5,000 grizzlies here and other night hunters like wolves that prowl often. They're all killers in the dark, active all the time. Tim won't trade his life just to save a little more food. He just hopes the predators don't ruin the moose tonight. At first light the next morning, he rushes to finish processing the rest. Lucky him, no grizzlies came in overnight. Looking at the leftover bones, he even thinks they'd make a great soup. Even with all the meat cut and moved to camp, storage is the real key, because fall temperatures in the Arctic are still around 14 degrees Celsius. Above 4 degrees Celsius doesn't preserve meat. It makes it spoil faster. So Tim plans to build a meat cache by the river, using airflow, where warm air rises and cold air sinks, to cool the space and the ground around it. But storing meat in the wild is never easy. Besides heat, Tim also has to keep the meat dry because wet conditions are perfect for bacteria. He cuts a lot of wood and builds a wall along the riverbank to keep the inside of the cache dry. While hauling logs, Tim just hopes winter comes early, because the faster winter hits, the better for him. Right, this moose kill might not have been at the perfect time, and it could even end up useless for this challenge. Because when Roland killed a muskox, a big snow hit the very next day, and winter showed up at the perfect time. But Tim lines the bottom of the meat cache with pine branches so air can move through better. He puts some meat inside the cache, then stacks heavy logs on top, each weighing hundreds of kilos, to keep it safe. So even if a grizzly stands on top and dances, it won't matter. Tim is confident this cache is impossible to break into. But the very next day, a small river otter slaps him right in the face, standing there and stealing meat like it owns the place. And Tim can't do a thing. While building the cache to keep airflow moving, Tim didn't seal it completely. That gap gets used by the otter's small body, and Tim's moose fat gets eaten. Anyone who watched Jordan win last season knows fat is the most important resource for winter. Jordan once had wolves steal his fat, so he had to eat grilled meat every day and almost starved. Because in a brutal winter, your body mostly burns sugar and carbs, and fat is the key fuel that converts into that energy. So the moose fat the otter stole is a massive loss for Tim. Moose meat is high in protein but low in calories, so when he cooks breakfast, Tim puts both meat and fat in the iron pan at the same time, so the rendered grease soaks fully into the meat, making the meal more calorie-dense and keeping him strong out here. Even the leftover grease after frying can't be wasted. Tim uses birch bark to make a sealed container, then pours all the leftover grease from the pan into it. From just one breakfast, he stores a few hundred grams of moose fat. That fat will definitely give Tim serious energy for winter. As for the rest of the fresh meat, Tim plans to turn the log shelter they just built into a smoker. Jordan tried this method first, and later Roland in Season 7 used it too. smoking muskox meat right inside his own shelter. It saves the work of building a new smoker and preserves the meat fast. Tim pulls a big slab of moose from the pile, cuts it into strips, then sews and hangs it inside the shelter to smoke. Cutting it thin shortens smoke time and pulls moisture out faster. Perfect when you need to preserve meat quickly. But over the last few days, and 3 times in a row, he's found huge bear tracks along the river, so smoking a massive amount of meat inside the shelter makes Tim uneasy. Still, right now, this log shelter is the only thing he can rely on. He just hopes it's strong enough to take a bear hit. And the main thing now is to move fast, cut the rest of the meat, and hang it inside to smoke because every extra day means more danger. Tim hangs moose meat all over the roof and inside the shelter. The raw meat smell fills the whole place. He builds a fire inside to smoke it because temperature control is everything when smoking meat. Too hot and the meat turns dry and hard. Too cool and you won't kill bacteria. And smoking hundreds of pounds of moose is brutal work. It could take a few more days. During that time, Tim can only keep sleeping in the shelter at night. After a hard race against the clock, finally Tim gets a chance to breathe and enjoy the moose meat. He puts moose fat and moose meat into the iron pan and fries them together. The meat soaks up the grease and tastes unreal. One bite down, ice and the heavy soreness built up in his muscles for days almost disappears right away. Every bite feels like a reward, the best payback for all that hard work. It fills Tim back up with hope for the wild days ahead. After 3 days of smoking in the log shelter, the moose meat is finally done. Tim carries all the smoked dry meat back to the meat cache by the river. Maybe because he's stocked so much moose meat, now even when he eats yogurt, he doesn't bother licking the lid. Even when grouse fly back and forth behind him, they don't catch his attention. When life gets better, your image has to match. Tim uses the same arrow that dropped the moose to shave his beard. Not sure how it feels using an arrow that still smells like blood to shave your face. For now, the big jobs are done. Just breaking down and hauling the moose burned over 10,000 calories. Right now, he craves nothing more than lying on a real bed, comfortable and warm, before fully moving into the new cabin. So Tim decides to build his own bed. Now, his biggest wish is simple: eat well and sleep in peace each day. That might just be a matter of time. In freezing winter, the ground pulls heat away far faster than air. And so a bed off the ground is critical for staying warm. Tim lines under the bed with fir branches for extra insulation. It's like giving the bed a thermal jacket. As time keeps moving forward, Tim sees moose near his shelter again. A cow moose walks slowly across the grass with her 2 calves, and he stands still, watching the 3 of them pass. A deep calm rises inside him, a kind of peace he hasn't felt in a long time. Seeing moose again feels like a reward for his unbreakable will. Winning this freezing survival challenge has never been easy. Even though Tim has stored a large amount of moose meat, it's still not time to relax. Winter hasn't fully arrived, and he must prepare carefully for the brutal cold ahead. After weeks of poor nutrition, Tim starts feeling dizzy with heavy brain fog. It becomes hard for him to focus. Then suddenly, his thumb gets cut by the saw blade. Out here in the wild, an injury is extremely dangerous. If handled the wrong way, it can get infected, leading to sepsis, tissue damage, organ failure, even death. Just one small accident can force a contestant out of the challenge. Tim plans to use fir branches to treat the cut on his thumb because fir has natural antibacterial properties. It helps slow bacteria and microbes and lowers the risk of infection. That is critical in harsh survival conditions, where keeping a wound clean means staying alive. After treating the injury, Tim reflects on his mental state and realizes his mind keeps pushing him to finish tasks that aren't even necessary. It may be stress, lack of sleep, or simply working too hard for too long. He tells himself to slow down and get more rest. Food keeps you alive, but a strong mindset is what wins. He hopes he can stay mentally steady for the hunger and cold ahead. As the days pass, the wolf howls around his shelter grow more frequent, keeping him awake through the night. During the shift from fall to winter, as food becomes scarce, wolves howl more to warn other packs, to hunt, and to mark their territory. The next morning, Tim finds wolf tracks in the nearby grass. Wolves move in packs. So if this area becomes their territory, his living space turns far more dangerous. But what worries him most is his food cache being stolen. With bow in hand, Tim walks along the river back to the old moose butchering site and finds fresh bear tracks. From the depth of the claw marks, he estimates the bear weighs around 500 pounds. For Tim, after eating moose for more than 10 days, this isn't entirely bad news. He even feels ready for a change of flavor and wouldn't mind smoking a few hundred more pounds of meat. When he reaches the butchering site, most of the skeleton is gone. And if grizzlies really live around here, his situation would be even more dangerous, with both wolves and bears fighting over this area. Tim, of course, won't back down. He gathers a pile of dry sticks and decides to mark his territory his own way. Got to say, this move is pretty smart. He uses the fact that his urine can spray high, odd leaving scent on tree branches, making bears think the marker is a large animal, which creates a real deterrent. Small guy, big guts. He takes a thick, regular cord and some wire, threads it through the fish's lower jaw to form a closed loop, then releases the pike back into the river to keep it alive. This is a smart and highly practical survival strategy, helping extend the food supply and reduce waste, because adapting to the environment and survival needs is essential to ensure a steady food source when winter hits. Looking at the whole Alone series, when it comes to managing live fish, so far Tim is almost the only one who's done it. He even became the contestant with the highest total food supply on the show, with over 1,130 pounds of stored food. While cooking breakfast, Tim hears movement from the riverbank again, but he doesn't have his camera, so he runs back to grab another camera to film and finds another fish on the line. This time a giant pike over 1 meter long, so heavy he can barely hold it with one hand. Tim releases this fish back into the river too, because drawing all the fish would attract martens, wolves, and small animals. And sometimes these pests cause more trouble than big predators. Back at camp, a crow ruins part of his breakfast fish. Tim yells at it in the tree, but the moment he turns away, it swoops down again, giving him a headache. Too much food can become a problem. Starting the morning already furious, checking the meat cache, he finds half the fish eaten. The rest isn't clean anymore. Tim suspects mice and realizes he can't relax for even a moment. If this keeps up, his food supply will be wiped out. So he decides to build a second food cache, Roland style, set low to the ground. He cuts a lot of wood and chooses a clearing near camp to rebuild the meat box. At first, he lines the bottom with mesh, but it won't stop mice, so he switches to using moose hide as a sealed bag, fully enclosed. Because moose hide is nearly an inch thick, it's hard for small animals to chew through. As for the arrow holes, Tim plans to stitch them with wire. Numb using his multi-tool with an awl to mark surfaces or punch small holes in hide and wood, showing a true wilderness expert. Not just skilled at hunting and chopping wood, but also handy with needle and thread like a field surgeon. Next, he just needs to place over 100 pounds of moose hide into the wooden box, and he's done. Hard to imagine how comfortable it would be to use that hide as a bed. Since moose hair absorbs moisture well, food stored inside stays dry. With full protection from the hide, his stored meat will be much safer. Tim keeps cutting more wood and lays it over the meat cache as a lid. Now, a perfect meat cache is complete. Even if the meat inside were gone, just this moose hide alone could help Tim survive more than 10 days in winter. Winter on the Mackenzie River in the Arctic Circle arrives fast. After just one night, everything is covered in white snow. This snowfall marks the northern wilderness officially entering winter. A moose family even brings their calf out to see the first snow. That warm scene makes Tim miss his own family. But living alone in the wild, the real cold is just beginning. Early morning, Tim takes his bow and arrows out hunting and spots a wolf leaving the meat cache. He's relieved it didn't get anything. Clearly the cache did its job. But the logs on top aren't secured, so against a black bear or wolf it won't be enough. Bind wolves are smart and persistent predators. Jordan once battled wolves and even called himself stupid. If Tim's cache isn't secured, it could end the same way as Jordan's, so Tim plans to set a cross log on top to lock it down. He finds a trunk, cuts grooves between two big trees, then wedges the log in to secure it. Now, the food cache can't be moved. With the meat box protected, he can sleep easier at night. After securing the cache, the pike tied in the river must be handled, because if the river freezes, it could snap the lines. But when Tim checks, the biggest pike is gone. This one alone was at least 7 meals. A 40-inch pike holds over 16,000 calories. A huge loss for Tim. The fish was tied with paracord, so it shouldn't have escaped. Tim thinks an otter dragged it off. But the bad luck continues when the second fish is gone too. 2 big fish lost cost him over 10 days of food. Now Tim regrets not drying them from the start. He should have smoked them all. He processes the remaining fish and stores them in the new cache. Even though he still has plenty of meat, losing 2 big fish still hurts. Every day he checks the cache and finds the pine marten back again, trying to steal food. It looks cute, but it's bold, not afraid of Tim. It runs straight to the meat cache, right in front of him. That kind of nerve is a real headache. Pine martens are protected locally, so Tim can't hunt it. He uses a deterrent to scare it off. Maybe it knows it's protected. That's why it's so fearless at -3 degrees Celsius. Tim goes to check his fishing lines and suddenly notices a line that went missing the day before. He uses a stick to pull it up and is shocked to see a pike still tied, with the wire through its jaw. "I just recovered the fish that slipped off the stringer." It's hard to believe the fish he thought was lost has returned. The big fish that was gone is back. It doesn't just give him hope, it boosts his confidence for what's ahead. Tim's stored meat increases by over 10 more pounds of fish. All Tim needs now is to not break down mentally from missing his family. Then winning is only a matter of time. Tim keeps storing the cleaned fish in the wooden box and heads back to camp. He decides to light a fire inside the shelter to warm up, but when he built the shelter, he didn't make an indoor fireplace. So when he burns a fire, the smoke can't vent well and the smoke level inside shoots up. He tries to sit through it for a bit, but finally can't take it and steps outside. Breathing too much smoke can inflame and swell the lungs, leaving the body short on oxygen. If he burns a fire while sleeping at night, he could choke on smoke and die in his sleep. The shelter can't stay warm, especially once winter arrives, meaning the survival environment will get even harsher. How well the shelter holds heat directly affects sleep at night, and if he can't rest well, no amount of meat can fix his condition. So Tim comes up with an idea for a smoke shield, like a range hood. He cuts a stiff piece of moose hide, then hangs it above the fire to block the rising smoke and guide it out through the vent hole. This small upgrade solves the shelter's poor smoke ventilation perfectly. It saves the work of building a fireplace and still keeps him warm. While tending the fire, Tim suddenly talks to himself, on doing his mom's voice. "I brought you a rabbit and 2 squirrels. Hurry up and get back to work, Rose Tony." Maybe the long isolation and loneliness have put huge mental pressure on Tim. These self-entertaining acts and role-playing aren't just jokes. They're a coping mechanism for loneliness, mental stress, and harsh survival conditions. It might even be an emergency response from living alone too long, even if it helps him cope. Seeing it happen so often still shows how deep the loneliness is. Tim is getting stronger day by day. When he goes out to check traps, he finds the ground covered in thick white snow. The whole area looks like the Arctic. He brings smoked meat with him to eat. Smoked moose meat is rock hard from being dried out. Plus, Tim is malnourished from a long-term unbalanced diet, so every time he eats jerky, his teeth hurt badly. This tooth pain happened before to Jordan in episode 6 of Alone when he ate fat. To survive long-term out here, Tim has to keep looking for fresh meat, but today none of the traps hit. By chance, he goes back to the spot where he killed a moose before and suddenly sees another moose skeleton nearby. Not sure if it's the same moose he took or not. Tim starts collecting moose bones and finds the meat on the ribs has been picked clean by predators. He chops some bones with his axe and brings them back, but these bones aren't for soup or eating. They're for making different survival tools to help him hunt and find fresh meat. Right now, fishing is still the easiest way for Tim to get fresh meat, but he only has 4 hooks left, so Tim plans to use moose bone to make a gorge hook. This hook is different from a normal fish hook because both ends are sharp. If it works well, Tim can set a lot of them to fish and greatly raise his success rate. Besides fishing, Tim also sets 5 snare traps in the forest. By the rules of Alone, whoever lasts the longest becomes the champion. So Tim has to stockpile as much food as possible to stay out longer. But Season 7 has a special rule. Survive 100 days and you get the prize. Knowing the end date also eases the mental torture. Tim's current mental strategy is to pass day 70 because he knows rivals like Jack and William are very strong, so he has to store more meat to stretch his time out here. 3 traps in a row come up empty, but when he checks the last one, he lucks into a rabbit. Tim even snaps the rabbit's neck on the spot. Squeamish viewers should be careful with this part. A rabbit has a decent amount of meat, but very little fat. It only gives Tim about 2,000 calories. In the deep winter cold, what people need most is fat, not protein. If you only eat rabbit, you can still starve. So Tim plans to cook moose meat with rabbit to get a better balance, meeting energy needs and keeping him going long term. Mixing in fatty foods the right way not only gives more heat and nutrition, it also improves taste and storage. So in harsh conditions, it still helps protect Tim's health. Back in the shelter, after a bowl of rabbit stew, he feels a lot better. Because in this frozen wilderness, every day is packed with challenges. This rabbit isn't just a successful hunt win, it's a major breakthrough for survival. Rabbit meat breaks up his long, boring diet. Compared to the smoked moose meat he depends on, adding rabbit means more variety and nutrition and gives his taste buds something new, more satisfying and, more importantly, practical. Tim cooks rabbit with moose fat, boosting the calorie density and giving him a stronger survival buffer for what comes next. Every day, Tim goes to the river to check his lines. Fishing keeps getting harder, with the temperature now down to -4. Outside, snow falls heavy, the wind cuts to the bone, but inside the shelter it feels like spring, showing just how well this shelter holds heat. Tim also uses wood to carve a small fox toy for his son. Since he has 2 sons, he has to carve 2 toys and squirrel tails, trophies from his first day's hunt. The toys look simple, but for Tim, it's how he kills time in the Arctic wild. Since day 1 until now, Tim has lost up to 30 pounds. Even though he eats meat every day, his energy burn is far more than he expected. Chopping wood and checking lines become daily must-do tasks. Otter tracks on the bank show its back again, sneaking close to the fishing line to steal fish. The tight line in the water signals a fish is on. And sure enough, the moose bone gorge hook Tim made finally works, helping him land a pike. The bone catches crosswise in the fish's throat, so it dies. It never expected to get its throat pinned by moose bone. Tim's food supply grows again. With plenty of food in this brutal winter, he doesn't even feel cold. A satisfied smile shows he's full of confidence. Maybe even Tim himself can't find a reason to fail in this deep freeze challenge. And, as of now, it's hard to lose when it's already day 55. The Arctic wild keeps getting colder. Early morning, Tim sits in the shelter chewing jerky. Yesterday he didn't eat all day to let his teeth rest, but last night he slept great. Tim says he slept about 8 hours, and good sleep makes him feel sharper. He goes out to check the snares, hoping to catch a rabbit every day, because cooked with moose fat, it tastes truly amazing. Besides setting snares, once the river freezes, he can try ice fishing too. But when he checks the trap, he finds the line snapped. From the marks on the ground, you can tell the animal fought hard and got away. He looks around but sees no fresh tracks. Even though his dried meat could last to day 100, a few days with no fresh protein start to worry him. Any strong contestant stockpiles meat because food brings a sense of safety. That night, while Tim simmers meat in the shelter, he hears movement outside. A wolverine comes near camp, likely to steal meat. Tim puts on a headlamp and checks, but finds nothing. The next morning, he checks the meat cache again and sees wolverine tracks all over the snow, and a wooden box knocked down. It's the box he used for pike and organs. All the bait inside has been eaten clean. Tim follows the tracks down to the riverbank and figures the wolverine will definitely come back. If Tim catches that wolverine, winning the $1 million prize is only a matter of time. He goes back to the shelter for his bow and heads to the meadow where he took the moose to scout. There are tons of wolverine tracks there. This animal can travel up to 24 kilometers a day for food, which shocks Tim. He can't believe how sharp their nose is, that from so far away it still found his meat cache, and from the moment it stole his bait, Tim decides it has to pay in blood. And he takes down all the snares to use the cord as an alarm system to catch the wolverine. A silent showdown between man and predator officially begins. By day 58, while exploring outside, Tim finds a moose antler and decides to modify it, fixing it to a piece of driftwood to make an instrument. Because long-term isolation in the wild starts to wear him down mentally, he has to try different ways to vent stress, like this bass made from moose antler to kill time and stay entertained. The final stage of Alone is really a mental war. Whoever can endure wins. Contestants can set and finish one small survival goal each day to build confidence and avoid sitting idle, then missing family too much. Just like Tim, he sets himself a goal: to hold a concert in the Arctic wilderness. In a blink, it's already day 61. Today the sun is especially bright. Tim sits in the log cabin and can watch the distant snow. Inside, he's simmering breakfast with moose meat. Firewood is plentiful, and the shelter stays heated non-stop. You could say Tim is the best survival contestant this season. He plans to split his dried moose meat into 2 piles. Tim uses a short-sleeved t-shirt as a meat bag, separating the moose jerky into soft and hard pieces. The soft pieces can be torn and eaten right away. The rock-hard pieces can only be stewed. While sorting the jerky, he finds some meat has molded. Tim is stunned. He blurts out he can't believe dried meat can grow mold. He decides to cut off the moldy part and eat those pieces first, wondering why it happened. Here's the thing. Even though smoking can extend meat storage, even in the cold, humidity swings and temperature gaps still affect jerky. Daytime temps are low, but at night moisture condenses and the meat surface absorbs it, giving mold a chance to grow. On top of that, Tim keeps a warming fire going in the shelter 24/7, making the inside temperature even better for bacteria to multiply. This is like season 7 of Alone, when Roland stored berries in his shelter and, in the end, they all went moldy and spoiled. Right now, Tim's daily meals are mostly fish stew. The jerky is more like a snack to keep protein coming in. Tim might be the most comfortable person I've ever seen in the wild. A log house built tight for an Arctic winter. Outside, the snow falls thick, but inside, it's warm, like spring. He eats a hot stew. Even though he eats meat every day, Tim still feels strong hunger because the Arctic night lasts up to 18 hours, more forcing a freedom-loving guy like him to stay stuck in this tight log cabin, and he misses his family more each day. He just wants the challenge to end soon, so every day he tries to find things that make him happy and stay focused. He can only stay busy with daily chores and not let himself stop, because the moment he's idle, the homesickness floods in. Now the temperature has dropped to -7. The Mackenzie River is completely frozen. Tim decides to try ice fishing for more fish meat. He ties a cord to his axe so he won't drop it in the river while chopping ice. After he opens a hole, he uses the best fresh moose meat as bait, hoping the fish won't miss it. Tim sets multiple lines on the ice to raise the odds. Drop enough lines, and sooner or later, a fish will bite. Ice fishing in this brutal cold is Tim's biggest physical test yet. Standing and working on the ice for too long makes his hands and feet slowly go numb. Back at the shelter, he immediately lights a fire to warm up. He grabs a bundle of dry, rotten pine needles and throws it in. It flares up violently, like an explosion. Tim worries the flames will catch the shelter roof, so he quickly sets a pot of meat over the fire to block the flames. Because one mistake, and the shelter burns, and all his work goes up with it. Luckily, he finally gets the fire under control, and it doesn't turn into a real blaze. After that close call, Tim starts noticing flaws in the shelter and realizes he can't always count on luck like that, so he plans to upgrade the shelter to keep it from happening again. Early that morning, Tim wakes up and starts the repair plan, because as long as the fire risk isn't fixed, he won't feel at ease. At this critical stage, any risk could force him to quit. Tim removes the moose hide layer on the roof and finds the roof right above the fire has already started to char. If it keeps going, it could catch fire. He shifts the moose hide to one side of the roof for protection, since moose hide can act as a shield. The hide that used to be his smoke shield is now removed, so when he lights a fire, smoke will definitely spread through the shelter again. Tim admits he no longer has the smoke shield and can only accept it for now. He relights the fire to test it. The cabin fills with smoke like before, but it's better than he expected, and overall, still tolerable. But life right now is not easy. Because he hasn't caught anything for a while. His lines and traps keep coming up empty. Some of his stored jerky has molded and spoiled, and the remaining food isn't enough to last long term. The fear of running out of food finally hits. Now the temperature drops to -12. Outside the shelter, everything is white with snow. A pine marten lounges on a tree, maybe waiting for Tim to toss it a piece of meat. But Tim is struggling too. He can barely take care of himself, let alone share. He goes to the shore to check his lines and sees snow deeper than 10 centimeters, making it easy to slip and fall. Deep snow makes ice fishing dangerous because it works like insulation, slowing the freezing process and making the ice thin and weak. Even though it's very cold, Tim still sees a lot of water under the snow, and up ahead there are open water patches not frozen yet. In these conditions, it's not suitable for ice fishing at all. After chopping through the ice, on his line there's no fish, but the bait is gone. That's a good sign. Because at least it shows fish are still feeding. But the second line also comes up empty. The brutal cold of the Arctic wild makes Tim's toes start aching. Last night, the pain lasted all night. In season 7 of the show, a contestant once had to quit due to frost-numb toes. So after getting back to the shelter, Tim starts checking his feet. Based on the color, he thinks they're not turning black, just slightly gray. Most likely mild frostbite, not tissue death yet. If he stays warm and careful, it can still recover. Early morning on day 68, Tim goes to the meadow to call for moose. But now, the ground is covered in deep white snow. He hasn't seen moose in a long time, so he guesses they may have moved into Jack's or William's area. But he doesn't know. Jack was forced to leave on day 21 after a medical check. As for William, Tim thinks he may have killed a moose. But in reality, killing a moose is not simple. Not everyone is lucky enough to see a moose and take it. After going so long without eating, Tim suddenly feels this jerky still tastes pretty good. This is the mental crutch that keeps him going. And unless he's truly forced, he doesn't want to touch it, because eating jerky for so long has worn down his teeth and his gums keep bleeding. In conditions this harsh, that's a serious problem because bleeding gums can lead to infection and gingivitis, causing pain and inflammation. Right now, the most urgent thing is for Tim to find fresh food. He goes to the river to check his fish net, but the line is still. No movement. So odds are there's no fish. It's just as he thought, so he resets the line. The second one is empty too. Tim takes a piece of fish from the cache, meant for dinner, but thinking about other small animals that might be hungry too, he chooses to leave the fish out in the wild as a kind return to nature. Maybe this act of kindness becomes the key reason he later loses his shot at the $1 million prize. Later, near the end, when temps drop to -20, Tim feels lucky he made it to day 77. Starting on day 75, he sets up a small board game and each day removes one piece to kill time. This game helps him through the long stretches of idle time. And today is also the end of that game, when a piece named Jambo wins. Now the Arctic enters polar night. The sun doesn't rise for a long time, so even daytime is just dim light. Everything around him feels dark and heavy. Going too long without sunlight drags Tim's mood down hard. While checking traps outside, he suddenly sees in the snow rare rabbit tracks appear. And then his trap successfully catches a rabbit. This rabbit is extremely important to Tim because it brings not just fresh meat, but also organs and nutrient-rich oils, especially the liver, packed with vitamins and iron, and helping boost immunity in the cold and prevent anemia. Back at the shelter, Tim immediately eats the organs and the rabbit head. Even though people often ignore those parts, they still give valuable protein and fat. This simple rabbit meal puts energy back in his body and gives him drive to keep going. By day 81, Tim wakes up early in the shelter, thinking back to when he first arrived, when the river was loud and full of animal sounds. But once winter hit, it's like someone pressed mute. The land turns silent and the sky goes gray. That gloom weighs hard on his mind. Tim has never felt this alone. Near noon, when weak light shows up, he goes to the river to check his lines. With temps down to -23, there's still moving water under the snow. And when he hears the ice crack, Tim realizes right away this spot is no longer safe for ice fishing. He risks falling in to pull his lines back and learns fishing is completely hopeless now, forcing him to put all his remaining survival hope into his traps. Back at the shelter after checking traps, he sits in the tent and looks back on the whole run. He feels this time out here has been full and unforgettable. He knows that if he keeps eating jerky, he could still hold on to day 100. But the hard jerky makes his teeth ache. And inside, Tim has started to accept he doesn't need to prove anything anymore. He knows exactly who he is and believes he could go far past 100 days. The moment Tim steps out of the shelter, I already know the outcome. He holds the phone and stands in the wind and snow, hesitating, maybe still holding regret for all he put in. But from day 1 to today, not a single day was meaningless. Tim stands still in the cold wind, both hands gripping the phone tight. Every breath in cuts deep with cold. He knows no matter what decision he makes, this challenge is still a journey, a bright one. He hesitates, like he still has hope pulling him to stay. But in the end, Tim still can't get past the wall in his mind. If he quits, that's fine. But not today. 2 more days pass. Tim sits in the shelter, gnawing jerky so hard it makes his teeth ache, but he wonders why he doesn't just stew it in the cast iron pot. Tim knows if he relies on this jerky alone, he can make it to day 100. But waiting with no purpose makes him question what he's fighting for. And if it's only for money, little by little, it starts to feel meaningless. The scene right now is perfect. Outside, snow falls heavy. Inside, the shelter is warm like spring. By skill alone, Tim has survived extremely well in this harsh Arctic land. From bare hands to this point, he no longer needs to prove his survival skills to anyone. So, he knows he doesn't want to keep waiting with no purpose just for money. He states clearly he made it, 83 days, and calls that a success. And then calmly picks up the phone and calls the show to officially tap out. This time, Tim doesn't hesitate. When the crew arrives, he stands in front of the camera and explains why he's leaving, stressing he's not being forced by anything. Instead, he feels happy. He feels truly alive and believes he has truly won this battle. Tim is grateful he got to live through that time, a place where he once felt excitement and resistance, fear and persistence. The chess pieces on the board were under his control, but the game of life in the wild is never easy. Tim's departure was not forced by the harsh land, but chosen from within. As a contestant who had more food than anyone in show history, from day 1 to day 83, he did something rare. He had meat every single day. And he may also be the happiest person ever to live alone in the wild. If killing big game makes someone a legend, then I'd call Tim a warrior of happiness, because in this freezing challenge, even though he didn't go to the end, he is still a winner. Through loneliness, fatigue, and hardship, he kept moving forward. Or in the fight against nature and his own mind, he found a victory that belonged to him. Tim teaches us that in the wild, the most important thing isn't just survival, but growth of the spirit. And here, this video series about this episode's champion comes to an end. Please like and subscribe to follow more videos coming soon.